Hi, I'm Billy Keels, the host of the Going Long podcast. Every week, I'm going to be here interviewing the absolute best in the business as it relates to real asset investing, as well as real Main Street investors. We're going to be having conversations where you can listen in, and that's going to help you to continue on your path to education so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident in investing long distance. So make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you're liking it as well, because that way you can get every single episode as soon as it comes out. And by the way, don't forget to leave today's episode a 5-star review. Let's go ahead and listen to today's conversation. Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. I'm your host, Billy Keels. And if you've ever wanted to learn how to create your own rough BRAFT plan for your lifestyle with long distance real estate investing, then guess what? Today's the conversation that you're going to want to listen to until the very, very end. I absolutely promise, because today's guest is a passionate as well as a driven global real estate investor who's also focused on leadership in business as well as investing in land. So I'm sure she's going to tell us a lot more about that and how she's making that work and impactful for other people. She also, with her business, she has business solutions that provide efficient real estate marketing as well as world-class data solutions, which is something that's close to my heart as well. And she's the co-founder of Global Citizens HQ, as well as Supercharged Offers, as well as Wilda. And she's going to tell us more about that, Women in Leadership and Development Alliance, because that's something that is really, really awesome. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome to today's conversation, Alicia Jarret. Alicia, welcome to the show.
Oh, Billy, thank you so much for that introduction. I've got the feeling we're going to need more like 4 hours to cover that rather than half an hour, but let's jump in, my friend. I'm excited.
I absolutely love it. And listen, I am not going to, if people don't know where you're from already or haven't picked up on it already, we're going to jump right into that, because afterwards, I just want to thank you for making time to invest with me and the entire Going Long family. So listen, as you know, I love asking everybody at least the same 5 questions. So we get 2 in the beginning, we're going to get 3 in the end, and then in the middle, we're going to get to know a lot more about you, all of the different things that you are doing in the lives that you are impacting, because I know that that's something that's super important for you. So let's get started. First and foremost, and we're going to adapt my first question a little bit because of where you are, but where in the world are you actually located?
Yeah, so if people couldn't guess from my accent, I am in Australia. We are actually down south in Australia in Melbourne, or as the locals call it, we say Melbourne. But it's Melbourne is how it's spelled. But for anyone that hasn't been here, it's a fantastic city. I was just actually saying to you before, Billy, that Melbourne is probably the most sort of European style city across Australia. We're known for our great culture, our food, our wine, our multicultural elements, our arts, things like that. So it's a fantastic city to live in. But outside of that, we normally spend half of our year in the States. And we, unfortunately, with COVID, we haven't been able to go back for a little while. But so we're kind of, even though our home base is here, my partner Matt and I are very nomadic. We like to fill our passports and explore the world as well.
Well, that's kind of strange. An Australian who actually likes to travel.
Yeah, go figure.
That's kind of strange. Never heard anything like that before. No, and I mentioned to you before as well. I mean, I've been to Australia twice. I've still not been down south. Every time I've seen to get into Sydney, I've headed north. So we'll have to figure out how I make it down south and connect with you on one of my next trips. So.
I'd love that. Yeah, Melbourne really is a beautiful city, and it's 5 million people, so it's not exactly small, and it's got lots to offer. So I'd love for you to come and visit, Billy.
It'd be fantastic. I'll hold you to that. So listen, the other thing is, one of the things we love to also start out with is helping us to understand with some positivity. Help us understand, what's the most positive thing that has happened to you in the last 24 hours?
Yeah, what's been really interesting, and I'll start off with the, not that I want to start with the negative, but we woke up this morning and it wasn't the world's greatest start to the day. But honestly, within the space of a couple of hours, everything shifted, where my partner Matt and I sat down and, I think when bad things happen, how you approach it and how you talk about it and process it is where the gold lies. So, in business, things go wrong, things happen. And the most positive thing that actually came out of today is we sat down and looked at some of the things that had happened, and out of that came up with a whole new strategy around some directions that we're going to take our business. And that in itself is actually really enlightening and really positive and really empowering. And at the same time, two of our clients, without me asking, paid invoices for our marketing. So, you have these conversations and then you go back to your email and there's, a whole couple more $1,000 sitting there for you. And it's like, okay, the day just shifted. So yeah, today was a really good day and I've ended it on a high. And I think it's just testament to when you're an entrepreneur and business owner that anything that happens, you've got the opportunity to turn that around. And that's how you and I connected, I think, was following each other online and seeing what we do around that.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say, and that is so, I love the fact that you are sharing that story with us because it depends on where you want to focus your time and your energy. You can focus on the way that things did not work and kind of wallow in that and not do anything. At the same time, you can take that as a learning opportunity and say, okay, listen, this happened. How do we actually make the most out of this particular opportunity? It doesn't mean that it's going to be optimal, but it's just the way that you look at things. And so having that in common and you being able to share that with us is fantastic. And yes, anytime you get those deposits on time or early, that's definitely a very nice thing. It's
a win. I was like, that's the universe looking over us going, we're just going to make today a bit easier for you. I was like, thanks, universe.
Exactly. All right. And now you'll do your part. So listen, Alicia, it is like I tried to do my best in kind of a couple of lines to tell your story at a very high level, of course. And I know it's very difficult, especially for me. And so one of the things that I would love for you to do to help us, meaning me and the entire Going Long family, get to know you even more, is how you tell your backstory in your own words, in your own story. And also, the one thing I would ask, Alicia, is if you could also please maybe highlight a couple of the decisions that you made that were really important decisions that have helped you to get to this point in your journey. And then from there, you and I can just kind of have a conversation and help people understand what the future looks like.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll try and keep it at a relatively high level for your listeners because there's lots that gets packed into this, right? But if I can go back to my story. So I left home very early. I left home at 17 and moved interstate to start my study and my career on my own. Didn't know anyone in Melbourne. And here we are 26 years later and I've carved out a wonderful life over here. But I think very early, I've always been a bit of a risk taker. And somebody who's been willing to give something a go and back myself. And that's kind of evident throughout my story. So where I started in my career, Billy, was in the human resources field, in leadership, sitting on executive teams, being somebody that we were talking before about being a coach, a mentor, looking at organizational development, change, anything in that organizational context. And I really loved it because I got to work with people day in, day out. But I guess I got to a point in my career that I thought, there's actually only so much change and impact that I can have within an organization. And there's so much more that I want to offer the world. So about 12 years ago now, I actually went and started, I left a 6-figure, great paying job and went and started my own consulting practice. And that, again, needed to back myself and have a leap of faith. Because to leave a really good paying job and go out on your own, some people think that's a little crazy. But I just knew that there was more to the world and more that I could offer. So I went and started my own practice doing leadership training, organizational development consulting, really looking at how I can help leaders in organizations be better. Because I really just started to see over many years, and I still see it now in people that have their own businesses, Billy, and that is that people don't leave jobs, people leave people. And where it's at is in relationship. And if we can help organizations, and now I've got a passion in helping small businesses be better at this stuff, if we can help people to lead their teams more effectively and inspire and motivate, we've actually got the ability to change lives. So I went and did that. And about 10 years in, I was loving what I was doing, but unfortunately I'd probably created a business model that became reliant on me. So exchanging my time for money and me being the brand. And there's only so much as that you can do with that. And so again, my question was, well, how can I impact the world and how does this align with my values? And at this time, my partner Matt and I were really sitting back and thinking, well, we're now in our mid-40s. Life doesn't get any shorter. This was when we're in our early 40s, going back a few years. And it was like, okay, so how do we want to live our lives? What kind of life do we want to create for ourselves? And is it me expanding my business and him joining me in that? Is it him doing something, or is it something else entirely different? And we landed on real estate. And we love doing real estate here in Australia, but the strategies on what you can do here in Australia are actually quite limited. So I started to explore other markets, and I went and signed us up for a real estate program on how to do deals in the US. And he thought I was crazy. And I remember coming home and saying, just so you know, I've signed us up for a course to do real estate in the States. And he's like, you've done what? and him being a healthy skeptic, he's like, okay, I think it's a great idea. It was a 3-day course at the time. And he said, I'll go along until, the morning tea or the lunch break. And if I'm there on day one and I think it's pretty good, then I'll stay. But if not, I'm out of there. I was like, yep, I'm okay with that, because I was the one that signed us up. He was just the participant I was dragging along. Yeah. And we get to that first break on day one and we look at each other and his eyes were lit up and he said, I think we're onto something here, because this really aligns with how we want to live our lives. And we've always said that, we're travelers at heart, we're nomads at heart. We want to be able to do a business that, as long as we've got a laptop and a phone, we should be able to do business from anywhere in the world. And interestingly enough, Billy, over the last few years, I've said on some other podcasts, we've done deals from the ski slopes in France. We've done deals on a yacht in the middle of the ocean in Croatia. We've done deals here from Australia, and they've all been in the US. So I think we're living proof that you can actually design a business and a life that not only aligns with the values and how you want to live, but is also, creating you some freedom. So that's the high level journey. And each one of those decisions has had to be about putting the right strategy in place, but backing ourselves and believing in ourselves, particularly when, as an entrepreneur, often you'll make some pretty crazy decisions and you will have friends and family looking at you going, you guys have gone a little crazy. Like, you're doing what? And so it's been a wild ride, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
There's so many things that you have just talked about, and the fact that you wouldn't want to change it for anything is phenomenal. And I mean, they're a number of different things. And that includes
the hard stuff too, right? Because it's not all easy.
Yeah, well, it's definitely not easy. And so what you're talking about is something that I hope people are really paying attention, because you talked about from the very beginning just having that understanding in organizational leadership and organizational behavior. And I love the fact that you talk about leaders, because a lot of times people will talk about managers. And I personally, because I'm a big fan of leadership and understanding leadership principles and things like that, I see a huge difference between managers and leaders. And so I love the fact that you talk just really quickly, and this is not real estate related. So will you, because I have my thought on that, but will you talk to us just really quickly on the difference between a leader and a manager, please?
Yeah, sure. So for me, a manager is just somebody who is the management of things. And that can include people as one of those things. You're managing processes, systems, outcomes, deliverables, et cetera. And you're honestly, if you see yourself as a manager, you're probably managing by exception or managing by reports. Yep. Somebody who's a leader, again, I think sometimes we confuse the word leadership in the organizational context of I need a team and I need people to lead. Yep. It's actually not that. For me, leadership is about how you show up in your everyday life and how you can impact those around you. You can be a business owner without anybody else in your business and be a leader. You can work in an organization and not actually have anybody that reports to you and be a leader, because you can have influence and impact, and you're the type of person when you're a leader that is willing to back yourself and push through those glass ceilings and shine. And that's the stuff that I think is great when we really expose ourselves as leaders to step out of our comfort zone and do what's uncomfortable. And that's when we stand out.
Perfect. I love that. And so thank you for just taking a moment to talk about that. And I always talk about, you're managing things and processes, and you're actually leading individuals, and you're leading in the way that you show up. That resonates with me a lot, and I'm sure it resonates with so many here that are part of the Going Long family. So one of the other things that you talked about, right? So, and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and because I don't come from a family that was real estate related or any of that kind of stuff. Did you have any background with real estate? Anybody in your family at all?
Zero.
No? Okay, zero.
I actually grew up in country South Australia, which is a good 9 hours drive from where I'm living now, and there was farms around us. I went to a primary school that I was one of like 60 kids in the school. I went to a public school. There was not a life of privilege. And I knew from a very early age that I wanted to be different to that, and I wanted to challenge the norm. So it's been an interesting journey when you reflect back on that, because I didn't have the faintest idea about real estate until I bought my first, investment property when I was in my late 20s.
So just on that, right, before we can get there, because I know that I'm living in Spain and I've decided to buy property that's in the United States, and I don't come from a family that has had any experience with real estate at all. So I've had to learn a lot of this stuff by myself, and then you start meeting people and things like that. So it sounds very similar. But my question to you is, if you're living in Australia and you got this 3-day boot camp that was back in the United States, and you don't have any kind of experience in the family
here in Australia, by the way.
Okay, cool. So, well, the boot camp was in Australia about buying in the US.
Totally.
So we're going to get to the United States soon, but like, if you don't come from a family with real estate and you got this boot camp, like, what was the inspiration for you to say, real estate? Sure, why not? Because it wasn't really on the radar.
It wasn't. So the two things I'll answer with that, Billy, and one is that, so my partner Matt and I, over the space of quite a few years, I think collectively we've probably got about 10 to 15 years of having investment properties here in Australia where we had tenants, and but that was it. We just had a couple of investment properties that were tenanted. We were getting some income, but the main strategy that a lot of people use here in Australia, and I'm sure some of your listeners are familiar with, is negative gearing, which means the property itself and what you're paying for that property is more than what you're getting on rent, and you write off that difference as some kind of weird forced savings on an annual basis, which just makes my head now go, because I just think, at what point in time did we think that was a good idea? Like, it really isn't. And so we'd had a few properties over here, and the point of entry in Australia and what you can do from a real estate perspective here in Australia is very limited, not just by legislation, but financially, it's also quite limiting. You buy a property over here, instantly you pay stamp duty. And when I say stamp duty, you might buy a $300,000 house and $30,000 of it goes in stamp duty, just like that. And capital gains tax is different. And there's a whole range of reasons why doing property over here is a bit challenging.
Alicia, sorry, just one thing. When you say stamp duty, is that basically like closing fees, or is that because when you say stamp duty, is that something that you pay to the local government, or help us understand?
It's a government tax.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's just a government tax that is applied to any property purchase that you make. And there's no rhyme or reason behind it. It's just a tax.
There you go. Yeah. Well, I mean,
what do we say? There's two things that are certain in life: death and taxes.
There you go. At least in Australia.
Yeah.
Which is probably why you're looking somewhere else now. Legally, as you mentioned. And then when you talk about negative gearing, just so that people understand that, it is what a lot of us would know as negative cash flow, which is exact same kind of thing that happened to me here in Barcelona, because I was looking here and I read the books and I was like, you can make 200 to 300 euros a month, or dollars. At least I was thinking about US dollars at that point in time. And then when I looked at what was actually the reality, it was I was going to have to pay 75 to 100 euros a month. And when I told other friends, they were like, oh, well, yeah, that's cool. That's fine. And I was like, well, no, that's not fine, because if you're supposed to investing, like, why would I pay for something that should be paying me? Oh, well, eventually you're going to get all that money back when you sell it. And I'm like, no, it doesn't make it. So
over here, you get that money back at tax time, because if you're in a high tax bracket, you use your loss to write off against your taxes. But again, that's just forced savings. It's not cash flow in the true sense of the word. So so to get to how did we land doing business in the States and why there? So one of the main reasons I signed up for the course that I did is I went along. I also do public speaking as part of my background, and I also still do it now. And I love the speaking circuit, and I love presenting and going along. So I love going along and seeing other people speak, because I get inspired by other people. Yeah. And we have an event here that hasn't been run for a couple of years, but it used to be run regularly. It was called the National Achievers Congress. And you get about 10 to 20,000 people, I don't know how many, but there was a lot, that would go along to this event. And it's a 2-day event where speakers from all around the world would come and talk about their businesses. Tony Robbins was one of them, Richard Branson was one of them. And then you have, that's your lead people that come and speak. And then you've got a whole bunch of others that come and talk. And one person, sitting here right now, I cannot remember his name, but he was one of the first people that started a fix and flip show on HGTV. back when houses and were being fix and flip. So, post the economic crash, he was going into different areas across the US, buying, distressed properties, doing them up, and now had created a business to teach other people how to do that. And I was so inspired by his story, not just about the fact that there was a business to be made in doing that, but the lives that he was impacting from people from the crash that was stuck with properties that they couldn't get rid of. Banks weren't helping them anymore. The homelessness rate that was being seen across the US, and just some really tragic things that really kind of touched my heart. And I thought, if we've got the ability, for me, good business is through what I call the lens of ecology. If it's good for you and it's good for me and it's good for the greater good, then that's ecological. And I think sometimes if we look at business through that lens and think, well, it's good for me because it's a good business model. It's good for you because it can help you out. And it's good for the greater good because we can help impact communities, then why not? So where we actually started, Billy, was with doing a couple of fix and flips. We actually started in houses and got into the fix and flip craze and did some of them, and it was great. But then all of a sudden it wasn't great. And just like we did today, sometimes you got to sit back and assess your strategy and pivot, which is what we did.
And so when you're able to pivot, you saw this opportunity, you were learning, and it took you to the US, right? And so I think
Correct.
This is something that is phenomenal. And just to kind of give people some perspective on this, like, because we talk about being in Europe and investing in the US, like if we consider that from Melbourne, and maybe I'm a little bit off, but from Melbourne to Jacksonville, Florida, it's roughly 15,677 kilometers, right?
It's a long way.
But just so everyone knows,
put it in time difference. It's 14 hours time difference.
Well, 14 hour time difference, or one day of flying, right? And like 1 day and 2 hours or something like that.
Correct.
Kind of look that up. So when we talk about long distance, you're definitely doing long distance and being able to do that. And a lot of times when we talk about it here, this is really a mindset thing, because whether you are investing from Melbourne to Sydney or from Melbourne to Barcelona or whatever the case may be, you kind of have to get out of your own way, because most of the books that we've read, Alicia, they've told us, well, be your landlord, be able to have more control, go see your properties and go do all of that kind of stuff, right? But talk to us about, because it's one thing to get the theory in a 3-day class, and then it's another thing to actually do it. So kind of maybe talk us through, like, before you did that first real deal, after you had the theory in your mind and you're like, yes, I'm going to go out and do it. What were some of the kind of, like, I guess, the demons that were in your mind that were saying, you know what? Don't do this. Definitely don't do this. It's way too far. It's 15,677 kilometers away. Talk to us maybe about what you were going through, and then what you were able to connect with that allowed you to actually take that real first step of action.
Yeah. Look, to be honest, there actually wasn't a huge amount of demons to begin with. It all made sense to us because we just kept, I think that the beauty for me is doing this with my partner, who's my business partner and my life partner. We were able, and we're both very different, we were able to bounce things off each other to kind of sense check along the way. Because there were times that we were like, are we crazy? Are we just a little bit crazy? But then we'd come back to, well, does the business make sense? Does the strategy make sense? Do the numbers make sense? Yes, it does. Okay, well, let's just forward, because you're exactly right. We could be doing the same business model and investing from here in Melbourne up to Sydney or Queensland, and it's still distance. So the principles remain the same. You've just got to get over it in your own mind and think, don't let distance be the barrier. And it really wasn't. And then where we started, Billy, was like, okay, well, if we're going to make a go at this, let's just test out our first property. And if that works, then we know we're onto something. Like, let's not go all in, because that's silly, but let's just kind of test out the first property and test it out in terms of the process, what we need to set up, and people. And that is, do we make the right connections? And we've still got the same title company, the same real estate agent, and the same probate attorney on our team 4.5 years later that we did when we first made those connections. Because again, being a leader is all about relationships. And so we did that first deal, and we then sat back and said, okay, what worked well? What didn't work well? What do we change? We then put that into practice and went and did the next deal. And it really wasn't that hard, I got to say. And I think it probably wasn't that hard because all along the way, we just kept challenging each other's mindset. When we had that little quivering moment of, oh, this is a bit nerve-wracking. We're about to send money to the States and buy a property that we've never seen on the advice of a realtor that we've never met. And it just felt right. So sometimes you got to follow your gut instinct on these things too, and just go, if that feels right and I'm willing to back myself, then go for it.
Yeah. And so the fact of the matter is you had to do some gut check. It felt right. At the same time, you were also, you mentioned, you looked for what I would call your POC. You had to get your proof of concept, because you weren't just going to go out and buy 50 properties at the first time, because you wanted to make sure that, hey, listen, can we test this once? Can we test this twice? If we see that this works, then, we at least tried it once. Maybe it wasn't perfect, probably won't be perfect. Probably the second time wasn't perfect, but each time it got that little bit better because you had experience from the first time. And so just the fact that you went through that process, you're also very fortunate, I would say, to be able to have your business partner and your life partner to be able to be there with you. And I'll just say that it doesn't always work that way, but the fact that you can bounce ideas off of one another in that way and still be able to challenge, and then after challenging one another, recognize, hey, you know what, this model seems to work, let's test it. That we'll move forward. So, and I guess that's the thing that I want everybody from the Going Long family to understand, is really listening to your story. It wasn't that there were massive demons, as I would call them, but it wasn't like perfect from the very beginning. You actually went through your process of being able to test and say, okay, well, what are the potential challenges and what could we not work and things like that. I didn't know if there's something else you maybe want to add to that.
There is. And I think the thing that you just touched on there, which I think is brilliant, and that is when you're aiming for perfection, more demons are going to come up. Because you're then always going to be saying, well, this is what I'm aiming for, and I only got to here, and that's where those demons are. Well, I wasn't enough. I didn't try hard enough. I didn't do this. But we said, let's just put our proof of concept in and test the fundamentals, not perfection, but let's just test the fundamentals, and then we'll do little incremental, looking at how we drive more excellence as opposed to perfection. I think I see too many people in the real estate investing game that fail too early and too soon because their goals were too big. They tried too much. They took on too much. Maybe they didn't have the right partner. And by the way, if I didn't have my life partner beside me, then that's the opportunity as a leader to step out and go, well, who else in the real estate investing community, because there are so many people in this community that are willing to help, who else can I connect with that is different to me that I can bounce ideas off? So there's always a way. And I think sometimes just making sure that you temper yourself around that so that those demons don't come out too much is a good thing.
No, yeah, definitely. And I guess maybe what have you found that has been the most, this is probably, you get this all the time, but what have you found has been the most, like the biggest thing that you thought was going to be a challenge, but at the end of the day really has not been?
Ooh,
in terms of being an effective, not efficient, but an effective, what I like to call here a long distance investor.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we thought was going to be easier in the long run was things like consistency and pipeline and deal flow, because when you go along to a lot of these education programs, they teach you there's some different systems and processes. And don't get me wrong, there's some fantastic educators out there, but they sell you the dream, right? So we were going into this like, okay, we can do this. We can market. We can get properties under contract. We can do this, without realizing that unless you've got the right systems and processes in place to have consistency in your acquisitions and your pipeline, very quickly, and this is our first probably 6 months, we got a deal. We then turned around here and focused on getting rid of that deal and doing a fix and flip, and all this energy's here. And then we sell it and we turn back and there's nothing there. Pipeline is empty. So one of the things that I think we struggled with early on was inconsistency with cash flow, with, getting some runs on the board and some wins. So that's where we created Supercharged Offers, which was an accidental business for us, because we wanted to really look at, well, how do we prevent that cash flow inconsistency? How do we prevent that deal pipeline inconsistency and really set up systems and processes so that acquisitions almost run for you, and then you can focus your time and energy on the things that make the biggest impact. And that's where we started to really pivot our business a few years ago around land with doing that. And that's been a huge change for us.
So, and I do want to definitely get into like some of the things and why you're focused on land and things like that. But one of the things I did mention in the beginning of the conversation, kind of to talk about this, is everyone having their own rough BRAFT plan, right? And so I would love for you, because I know that you have this concept of systems and processes and having a safety system, but maybe you could talk to us a little bit more about what BRAFT is all about. I've done my research, so I already know. BRAFT. All right, well, we'll have to change things, but
we'll call it BRAFT. I don't mind.
Yeah, well, this is okay. BRAFT. So talk to us about your safety system and how that comes into your overall methodology of doing things.
Yeah. So really that came back to when we decided to put a team in place. Coming back to my background in leadership and people development and things like that. I see so many people in this industry that say, well, I'm just going to get some resources and throw my problems at them and hope for miracles. It's like, yeah, you're still running a business. You still need to make sure that you're setting your people up for success, because when you don't, you're not successful. And one of the things that I like to make sure that when I'm hiring people and coaching people and mentoring them and setting up my team is making sure that I create the right culture around that. So BRAFT is something that I use in a lot of my coaching, and it really just comes back to 5 key principles. The first one, which is the B, and the whole concept around a BRAFT is like, sometimes we all need a safety raft. Yeah. And maybe the perfect safety raft isn't there, but there is the option B. Yeah. and that first element with BRAFT is, first of all, setting boundaries. I think sometimes I see a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, and if I can even take it back to, Michael Gerber has a great book called The E-Myth, which is you can be awesome in your business, but you might not, you can be awesome in your craft, but it doesn't mean you're going to be awesome in running a business in your craft. Yeah. And I think one of the first things and one of the first mistakes that a lot of leaders make and entrepreneurs make is they will get all these resources, but they're not going to set the boundaries. And what I mean by that is, all of my team, so in our land business, we've got 4 full-time resources that do all of my customer service for my sellers, my buyers. They negotiate for me. They get contracts out. They pretty much do everything. I'm only going to say it maybe 2 to 3 times a week. I might speak to a seller and a buyer now. My business runs for me. But that's because I've set very clear boundaries on here's what's acceptable, here's what's not acceptable. Here's the tolerances that you can negotiate in. Here's where those tolerances stop. Here's what's expected from you when it comes to your day-to-day job. Here's what's not okay around that. So really giving them clear boundaries so that they know what they can and can't do within that. And this is not about restricting boundaries. This is about giving wide boundaries so that people have got real ownership over things. Because when you can give people ownership with direction, they tend to step up. It's human behavior that people do. So the first element is boundaries. And then surrounding or within the framework of putting those boundaries in place, the first one is around relationships. And this is not only about building the right relationships with your team, but when it comes to my team, I'm actually expanding my team's relationships as a result of them working with me. So they are now getting to know my title company, my realtor, my probate attorney, our sellers, our buyers. They're building relationships with people because I want them to. And when you have a business where people feel connected in their relationships, not just with each other, but with who they serve and who they provide service to, they tend to stay longer and they tend to care better. So, leveraging and building and consistently driving relationships. I will always, whenever I do a podcast, I'll call out people that I have relationships with because I honor them on a day-to-day basis. Mm. The next one around that is the A is around accountability. There's a very clear kind of links back to the boundaries, but we're very clear in our team around who is accountable for what and what happens when accountability doesn't happen. So I think it's very easy when you've got resources that are, virtual resources, which mine are, for excuses to come into play. And we don't have a culture of excuses. We've got a culture of accountability. And that is, if something needs to be done, you know the risks if it's not done. And if it's not done, you better come to me with a solution as opposed to it didn't get done. So driving that culture of people being accountable, but also accountability needs to be coupled with rewards. How do you reward accountability so that people are focused on the right things, but equally you're then saying, when you do a great job, you're going to be part of the growth in our business and be rewarded, financially in that as well. So we reward our team quite handsomely for being accountable and driving results, which is great. Mm-hmm. And within that, the framework of feedback. So feedback is something that is consistent in our business. But here's the thing. I see too many business people having the mindset that feedback means I'm going to tell you when you've done something wrong, Billy. That's actually not feedback. Yeah. Feedback is about creating a culture where, twice a week, I'll actually ask my team, guys, what can we improve this week?
Yeah.
What's not working? What's our systems and processes that are slowing you down? So it's asking for feedback and input, but equally it's utilizing inputs to give feedback when things are good, when they're not good, when you've noticed that somebody stepped up, and being aware that feedback is part of the BAU. And the last thing is around trust.
Yeah. Trust
for me underpins everything. If you don't have a team that trusts you, but more than that, if you don't trust your team, they don't trust you back. Yep. Trust is a feeling that we get. It's like psychological safety. If we feel like we have a leader that backs us, and knowing that, my team might make a decision and it might not be the one that I would make, but at least if they come to me and say, hey, here's why I made it, yep, I can have a good, honest, open conversation with them about it. So for me, that the whole BRAFT methodology is all about the cultures that we create within our organizations, so that when we grow, people are growing with us. And I see too many entrepreneurs that don't think through those lenses when it comes to people they employ or hire.
And so the fact that you have taken that look through the lens for the people that you're bringing on board, you're setting the culture. And when you talk about the one thing about trust, there's a fantastic book with Stephen and Mark Covey, The Speed of Trust. And so I'm sure you're familiar with that one, but anyone who is not, I mean, when you can actually take that theory, put it into practice, you realize that there is, it's not just the feeling, but you can actually have tangible results when you create a true trusting organization and environment. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's another model I love by Brene Brown called the Braving model. And that's got some really actionable things in it as well. It's a long acronym, Braving, but she's got some fantastic things in there around cultures of trust and what can make trust, but what can really erode trust in a heartbeat. And there's some really important things in there.
So, and just one last thing, because I do want you to talk to us about why land, why Florida, and why specific places. What I also would love for the Going Long family to just recognize is, as you're talking and sharing with us, Alicia, it's very clear that the corporate role that you had with organizational behavior, organizational design, leadership, a lot of these principles, as you're talking to us today, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that because you had this training, putting it in practice, you had this love for this type of an area, but you just weren't able to find it in your corporate role. You're now taking those skills that you learned, and you're putting them into your own business, and you're deriving value and being able to positively impact other people's lives. So sometimes, when people get into this thing of, hey, you know what? I hate my job. I can't do this. I can't do that. Like, especially when you're in a really big, large corporate role, you have the opportunity to learn amazing things and be trained in ways that many people can't. And you can use those internally and you can use them externally, just like Alicia is doing here. And I just want people to recognize that, because I'm listening to you talk about your BRAFT model and I'm thinking, wow, this actually goes back to what she was doing probably in the very beginning, the first 10 or 11 years.
Yes, it does, but it does on two levels. So when I was working for other people in a job, which, by the way, for me is an acronym that means just over broke, because anyone I know who's in a job, they're just waiting for the next paycheck. I was in, corporate organizations. I worked in oil and energy. I worked in professional services and IT. And I didn't see many of these principles at play. I looked at organizational culture, and a lot of this stuff was lacking. And that's where I thought to myself, well, the only way that I can make a difference is to go out and do this on my own. So interestingly enough, all the things that I've learned about leadership, I went and did all Tony Robbins programs, and I absolutely adore some of the principles that he talks about. I've seen Brene Brown speak. I've done a lot of my own teachings on this stuff because it didn't come naturally, and because I was in cultures and organizations that didn't have a lot of the stuff that I'm now really passionate about. Anybody can learn this stuff. It's all out there. Go and grab yourself a good book and start reading.
start reading and definitely put it into practice. And so you've helped us to understand more about leadership. You've helped us to understand more about how you got into long distance investing, or investing beyond your backyard, as we like to talk about here. You've talked about how you put systems in place. You've talked about your BRAFT model, and you have also a very clear area that you are carving out in terms of land. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit about the decision for land, and what was it that attracted you to Florida specifically? And I don't know if there are other locations as well that we should know about.
Yeah, it is just Florida at this point in time because it just seems to be the state that keeps on giving. However, in our marketing business, we've got customers that do a lot of other locations. So we see that the land is everywhere. But where that kind of came for us, so I mentioned that we were doing some fix and flips and some houses. And the last house that we did, Billy, it really, two things. We changed our strategy and went for a beautiful, big, shiny house as opposed to affordable housing, which is what we were passionate about. Changed our strategy. The deal was really bad. The experience was really bad. And it made us go, okay, is this for us anymore? And so we started to go, yes, it is for us. So investing in the US is for us, but maybe we need to look at a different asset class that doesn't have the same stresses that we've just experienced. And we came across some research around land. And it really piqued our interest for a number of reasons. And I think a lot of people out there might look at vacant land and go, there's nothing on it. There's nothing you can do with it. But that's actually false. You can do a whole bunch with land. There's always an exit strategy for land, more so than what there is with other asset classes that have dwellings on them. There's you can do cash for land, you can sell a finance land, you can lease purchase land, but equally land has so many multiple uses that your end buyer and how you market land is actually really quite endless. And so we got into land purely because we knew that we could cycle through our deals a lot quicker. So the velocity of money and how we use our money to get things back. We knew that it didn't have the same amount of stresses. So no toilets, tenants, termites, trash. Sometimes there's trash and sometimes there's tenants, but they're a different type. And we knew that a lot of the problems that came with land, so survey issues, probate issues, title issues, taxes, liens, etc., they're quite easily solved as opposed to some of the other problems that come with other asset classes where there is a physical dwelling there. So we did our research, and again, like we started before, we went and did our first few deals and tested it and said, does this work? And yeah, it did. So here we are, 3 and a bit years, 4 years later, somewhere around there. Now got a team of 4. We do on average anywhere between 10 to 20 deals a month, and consistently looking at growing our business, and it's been super exciting.
So you're growing your business. You have a team that's now in place. You've taken a lot of the principles and made sure that you are in the business and you're able to work on the business, but you're not trapped in the business, and you're being able to serve other people. And now you started in one place, you moved to other places within the asset class known as real assets, or specifically in real estate. And now you found land. And this is something where you have continued to build, and now you're scaling. So can you talk to us, I guess in the last couple of minutes that we have left, like who is the person that you are finding that, wow, when you talk to this person, like land is really one of the things that this could be a really important part of their portfolio, because they're listening to us now, right? And they're thinking, well, okay, I never really thought about land. Alicia, she's living in Australia. She's got this system that she's built out for the last 4 years, and I never even thought about that. How do I know if this is something that could potentially be for me that I would want to find out more about?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I guess it would also always come back to, well, what is the strategy that people have for their business? Is it cash flow? Is it, buy and hold? Is it, longer term? And with land, you can do all of those. So with our business, we will market to off-market properties. And it's still the same principle, Billy, as well, when it comes to houses in a single family, multifamily, mobile home. You're always looking for an off-market property that's a distressed property. Land is still the same. So a distressed piece of land is a piece of land that's been owned for eons and nothing's ever been done with it. It's got back taxes or liens on it that the owner doesn't want to deal with. It's been handed down in generations, and it's got, title issues and probate issues that the owner doesn't want to deal with. So in some cases, it's still a distressed piece of property because an owner doesn't want anything to do with it. So we can go in, we help with those problems, we get those problems fixed. If there's no problems with the land, sometimes people just own land and they've done nothing with it and they just want it, off their books. And what we do with our end buyers then is we work with builders, developers, investors, people that want recreational land, you name it. There's always an end buyer, and we make sure that the land can be utilised. And I think the beautiful thing, if anybody's sitting back and going, well, why would I want to get into land? We can often do deals in as little as a couple of weeks. If there's a lot of problems to be sorted out, it can be a little bit longer, so maybe a few months. But The way that you can cycle through getting your marketing investment back is a lot quicker than a lot of other asset classes, but also the strategies around, so that's like getting good cash deals where we get it, we might get it under for 50 cents on the dollar, we'll sell it for 90 cents on the dollar, and there's our cut. And there's a lot of money to be made in land, trust me. And the other thing is cash flow. So we do a lot of seller financing with land, and here's where I think this is perfect in the market. Since the financial crash, and a lot of things have changed as to people trying to own real estate and get back into the market, banks don't lend money on vacant land. But there's a lot of wonderful, hardworking, decent American folks that we know and we love that are our end buyers that want to get back into property. Their credit rating is shot. No one's willing to help them out. And if we can be the bank, so if we can buy that property, help get them into a seller finance agreement where they can pay it off to us over time, we get really stable cash flow. They get back into the property game and they can eventually build a house, build a business, do whatever they want with that piece of land. We're helping that family. So it still comes back to our values of how do we help people who the big systems out there like the banks aren't willing to help anymore. So we get cash from the deals and we get cash flow on a monthly basis from seller financing. And that works well and it's easy.
So that is very cool. So you're doing cash as well as cash flow. So you have both of those elements. And I guess probably because we have people that are listening to us from all over the world, of course, and a lot of people that are in Europe and a lot of people in the US and people are in Australia and New Zealand, stuff like that. I guess my question for you would be, so if I'm living in Europe, are you able to help me? Because this is sounding really, really cool to me. Or is this someone that is typically going to be in the US as the person that you are best able to help? Maybe help us understand who is the person that you're
anywhere.
best.
Yeah, it really is anywhere. And I guess because, with our marketing business, which you and I might need to do another call and talk about real estate marketing, because I'm very passionate about that. Awesome. But, we've got marketing clients that do all types of different asset classes in the US, and a lot of them are doing land. We've got customers in Germany, Israel, Asia, Australia. They're all doing the same business that we're doing. So it can be done from anywhere. And I think first and foremost, if anyone's listening and they are in Europe or any other country and they're thinking, well, how do I get involved with this? First of all, get some basic education and contact me and I'll point you in the right direction for that, because there's some good educators out there that give you the little bits, and there's some great educators out there that give you everything you need. And I know who they are, so I can pass that on. So get some basic education. Find yourself somebody in a community that's doing what you want to do, and just like any good mentor, learn from them. I'm in a lot of different groups online where I'm learning from others and they're learning from me, and we share, and it's actually a really great community. So reach out to me and I'll help to point people in the right direction.
Perfect. And so I know a lot of people are like, how do I get in touch with you? So we're going to give them you're going to tell them exactly how they can learn more about what you're doing. But before we do that, we have to get to the going long final three, because I want to, like you said in the beginning, I want to just talk for 4 hours, and I literally would just keep talking to you for probably 6 days. Maybe we should take the flight.
We've been going nearly an hour, and it's
exactly. We should take the flight from Melbourne to Jacksonville. I'm sure we would be able to talk the entire time. So here's the thing: I never ask anyone the going long final three unless you tell me that you're ready for me to ask. So my question is, are you ready?
I'm ready.
I know you were born ready. I know you were born ready. We'll do this super lightning fast. So listen, we started kind of where you are in Australia. And I always like to bring things back to me, call me kind of egotistical, but I want to bring it back to Europe. So help us understand. Alicia, what is your favorite European city that's either on your bucket list to visit or that you've already visited?
So I've been to Europe quite a few times and I absolutely love Europe. I've got two of my favorite cities. I know you only asked one, but I'm going to give you two. One is actually Madrid. I have been to Madrid a few times and I absolutely love it. And the other one is Milan in Italy. Yes. I've got a soft spot for Milan, and Matt and I have got it on our bucket list to go and live there one day. We want to be able to live all around the world and immerse ourselves into a city, and Milan is on our list. Okay, fantastic. So since you over-deliver, I'll let you have both Madrid and Milan, and we'll make sure that they're in the show notes. Hey, by the way, I didn't mention this, but I just thought I would tell you this. Actually, when I bought my very first duplex, my wife and I were in Cairo. We were at in Giza,
and we had to run back to the hotel to sign the document. So when you talk about being on the ski slopes and all that kind of stuff, I definitely can relate to that.
Oh, I know. I remember when we did the deal on a yacht in Croatia, and it was like we were on a little dongle on the laptop that was trying to hook to some satellite from the middle of the ocean, and it was like the old dial-up days. We were watching this money try to transfer into an account, and it was like, come on,
go. So listen, so I guess question number 2 of the Going Long Final 3 is one of the things that I've seen and recognized with people that are very successful. And because you're someone who's very successful as well, Alicia, like the thing is, like super successful people, the reason that they're super successful is because they only make one mistake during their entire trajectory. And that's, do I keep getting that wrong? I think I keep getting that wrong every single time. Maybe it's maybe it's by design. I think no. So here's the thing. The reality is everybody makes mistakes, and successful people make even more mistakes than everybody else. The thing is they do something differently. And it's one of the things you've already alluded to in this conversation, but whether you call it a learning opportunity, you call it a mistake, whatever you call it, it's really successful people take a moment to learn a lesson when they have these learning opportunities, mistakes, whatever you call them. So you're getting to know a little bit more about the Going Long family, but I would ask you to share, what is the one lesson that you would share with the Going Long family so that we can also get closer to our goals and dreams as a result of something that happened to you?
Yep. So the mistake I'm going to share with you and the lesson that we got from that, it's actually quite a funny one, and I'll give you the short version. But when we first did our first marketing out to land properties, we followed all the steps and we got our letter together and did our marketing copy and got everything done. And we sent that off to print and we sent out a few thousand letters, and we were waiting. It's like, okay, the phone, any day now, the phone's going to ring. The phone's going to ring any day now. The phone didn't ring. And we're like, holy crap, what have we done wrong? This is really bad. Finally, the phone rings, and it's this woman. And for anyone who's listened to me on other podcasts, I've shared this story a few times, but I think it's a brilliant one to share. We get a phone call from this woman who's based in Florida, and she calls me and she's like, I'm just wondering if you've stolen my identity. And we're like, what? And she said, I am getting hundreds of phone calls on my telephone for all these people about these land deals. And I've got no idea who you guys are. I've got no idea what these people are talking about. I've done my research. I finally found out who you guys are. Help me out here. What the heck is going on? And what we'd realized is on the letter that we sent out on our phone number, we literally got two numbers back to front. That was all. Just a typo. And this poor woman had been getting all of our numbers. So the lessons here, 2 lessons. 1, when you make a mistake and it impacts somebody, treat them with the utmost of love, kindness, and respect. We ended up creating a really lovely relationship with this woman who, funnily enough, worked in sales. And we said to her, right, this is our mistake and we're going to own it, but we're going to make it up to you. But can you help us out through this process? And we had a really great conversation with her, and she ended up taking all of our calls and funneling all the leads through to us. And then we shouted her and her husband a beautiful gift at the end just to say thank you. The second learning is check and double check everything, especially if you've got somebody else doing it for you. Never, those minor details can actually cost you thousands when you get stuff wrong. So don't take it for granted, particularly when you've got another team doing things for you. Just put the right quality controls in place and you'll be fine.
Yeah, but check and
have
double
a laugh
check
about it at the end of the day too.
Well, yeah, and so I'm glad that you can have a laugh about it and share it with us now. But see, this is the thing: you take when you have these lemons, you make lemonade, and you make the most of it, and definitely sharing that with us is something that's fantastic. So listen, here's the last of the Going Long Final 3, and then people are going to want to get in touch with you. Like I know they want to get in touch with you. So we always love to be able to fill our minds with knowledge as well. And then we could take that theory and put it into practice. So what is the one book that you would recommend to the Going Long family?
Can I give you 2?
Go ahead. You're over delivering all the time. Go right ahead.
So 2, and I've already mentioned her before, but Brene Brown. So Dr. Brene Brown, I absolutely adore, and her book Dare to Lead. And the reason why I wanted to put that one in there, and it wasn't the one I was going to mention, but because we've spoken a lot about trust and things around that, I think it's a fantastic book for anybody who considers themselves a leader and an entrepreneur and wants to inspire those around them, which is great. And the other book, which is this one here. It's called Sell Like Crazy by Sabro Subi. He's actually based here in Melbourne in Australia, and he has a marketing company. But when we first started to build out our own marketing business, we just found this to be so incredibly valuable to look at the different ways that human behavior has changed when it comes to marketing, and how some of the old methods that you get taught around marketing just aren't relevant in the current day and age that we live and work in. So that's been a fantastic book for us to really learn some practical skills and tips on how do we really change the approach, because the customer experience has changed and we need to change with it. And that really helped us through that.
Fantastic. So both Sell Like Crazy and Dare to Lead, we will make sure that we include those on the show notes as well. And, you know, I'm just thinking from the very beginning of the conversation when you're talking about being 17 years old, being a risk taker, and you start recognizing that you have this love for being part of organizations, organizational leadership. And then from there, you're recognizing that, hey, listen, there's something a little bit that's kind of missing. You get this, you started buying some rental properties. You get this opportunity to then go on this 3-day boot camp to learn how to do something that's literally over 15,000 kilometers away.
Hearing me now, I'm like, no wonder people thought we might have been a bit crazy.
No, and you know, and then from there, having the wherewithal to be able to, and also being fortunate to be able to talk this through with your business and life partner and saying, hey, listen, we're gonna find out if this is right or wrong, and taking the flight and making sure that things were like they were supposed to. You then had your POC, your proof of concept. You saw that it worked, you tested it. And then, you know, 4.5 years later, you're at a point where you know specifically not just that you like real estate, you've tested some things, it didn't work, it wouldn't work with you, but now you're focused on a specific location, which is the state of Florida, and and a specific type of class, which is land, and being able to help other people get to their goals and dreams as a result of that, no matter where they live.
Correct.
And so I'm just thinking to myself, I know we have other things to talk about, like the whole marketing side we didn't even talk about, but everything that we've talked about so far would be fantastic.
Because there's so much more we can do.
Which would be great. And so, but even not even talking about that, I know the entire Going Long family wants to be in touch with you. They want to find out not just what's going on with the land stuff, but even the marketing stuff. They want to get a sneak peek before everybody else sees it later on. So help us understand, Alicia, what is the best way for the Going Long family to find out more about you, what you're doing, how you're impacting lives with your other businesses, please?
Yeah, sure. So they can check out our land business, which is spell.landscouts.com. And that will just give them a taste of, you know, what we're doing around the types of marketing for acquisitions of land. And then to get a taste of the types of properties that we deal with, they can go to forsale.landscouts.com. And that just kind of is the high-level acquisitions, dispositions of our land business. But pivotal to that is our supercharged offers business, which is where they can contact me. So Alicia, which is Alicia, and as Billy and I were talking about at the beginning, no one ever gets that right, which is why I spell it out. Alicia at superchargedoffers.com. And then they can head to our superchargedoffers.com page, Billy, where we've actually got on there, because one of the things I see lacking in this industry is people that don't have a really good strategy and business plan. One of the free things that we have on there is they can download what's called our No More Excuses business growth plan, because a lot of people don't have a growth plan. They can download that, and that's specific for real estate investors, and also an ebook on about, which a lot of the learnings from this are in, which is, why digital and print together, when done in the right way, can really help leverage your business. So that's our supercharged offers business. And that's also the space that we're helping other businesses and entrepreneurs and real estate investors grow their businesses as well, which is exciting. And they can give me a call. So our number for supercharged offers, is 888-538-5478. And one of my team members will take that call, and I'd be more than happy to, jump on the phone and help people out.
Which is
big fan of paying it forward.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that. And I can tell everyone from the Going Long family, I went over to superchargedoffers.com, and I'm going to recommend that everyone check that out as well, especially for your business owners who are feeling like you're ready to go to the next level for whatever reason it's not happening. Alicia and her business partner have it very well laid out. It's very graphic. It's very easy. And there are also ways to help you get to be more educated. And she's even given us the number to be able to reach out to the team as well. So definitely go over there. I've been over there myself, And so go to check it out. So
thanks, Billy.
as you know, I meant to say before as well, Alicia or Alicia, as we've gone a couple of times. I really, really want to thank you so much for investing your time with me and the entire Going Long family to help us to get to know more about you and the different businesses that you have founded, created, co-founded, and the lives that you're positively impacting. So thank you so much for investing your time with us.
Wonderful. From the bottom of my heart, thank you, Billy, for your time. And it's been absolutely incredible connecting with you. And to all your listeners, thanks for tuning in. Every single one of you that listens, warms my heart as well. So appreciation.
All right. Fantastic. And Alicia, if you'll give me just a couple seconds, I just want to say some last closing words to the Going Long family. And first of all, didn't you just love today's conversation? Like, this was amazing. Alicia just shared so much with us from all the way down under and helping us once again to recognize that being able to long distance invest is really primarily a mindset thing. And when you have the right team, when you have the right processes, everything is possible. And so, you can be the person that actually makes a positive impact on someone else's life, because someone needs to hear the story that Alicia told today. So just really quickly, just share today's episode with 2 or 3 people that needed to hear this message. And at the same time, when you're there, if you could take a couple seconds just to leave a quick, honest review, an honest written review of today's conversation, leave a rating, something that I take very seriously. It's something that I go through each and every one of them to continue to be able to improve what we're doing here on the podcast. And it's also a great way for us to attract even more fantastic experts like Alicia. So just take a couple seconds to leave that written review. I'd really appreciate that. And until then, I'm really looking forward to welcoming you back on the very next conversation. So until then, go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much. Wow. Don't you love hearing from top-notch experts in the field? When I was getting started, I really wish that I would have had access to such experts. And even more, I wish they would have given me a really simple list of things to follow so that I could have gotten to my goals much faster and been much happier even sooner. So that's why I've created for you the 7 things that you should avoid in order to be successful in long distance investing. And you can pick that up really easily by going to billykeels.com/7 things to avoid. And also, if you liked today's episode, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. I'm looking forward to seeing you on our very next episode, so go out and make it a great day.